We have a lot to go over in today's video, including the fallout from the Leafs-Bruins Game 7. The Leafs are now out of the playoffs, and all the focus and talk around is what comes next for Toronto. What significant changes could we see? What trades are they going to make? Many reporters and insiders believe this is the end for this core. So we'll discuss what changes we could see there, as well as behind the bench. We have our finalists as well for the Selke Trophy. Canada wins gold at the U18s, and we have lots of other updates around the NHL as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. Normally I start the videos off with a playoff recap, but we're going to hold that off here for a few minutes, go over a few other pieces of news, because it kind of flows better with talking about the Leafs losing a Game 7 going into what could come next here in the playoffs. So ultimately we have we'll start with our Selke Trophy finalists, which was revealed here today by the NHL, which includes Florida captain Alexander Barkov, Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Jordan Staal of the Carolina Hurricanes. So, of course, this is the first year without Patrice Bergeron in the league. So nice to see some different names in there. I know Matthews will have to give him credit that he's come a long way with his 200-foot game, and certainly deserves recognition there. I think sometimes centers do tend to get more recognition than wingers in that sense, because you can make an argument that Marner does a lot on the PK and defensively there as well. But certainly Matthews more of the 200-foot player 5-on-5. So obviously they all kind of deserve some recognition there. So we will see who wins here down the road. Of course, Canada wins gold at the U18 World Championships. Finish here today was Canada versus the U.S. Canada coach, of course, Gardner McDougall, longtime coach here at my hometown University of New Brunswick, who has won, I don't know how many, I think it's 9 national championships. Had an undefeated season with UMB this year. Takes the Canada team to the U18 tournament, and then he continues on. He's now 50-0 on his entire season between his regular duties with UMB and the Canada U18 team. Gavin McKenna had a hat trick today to lead Canada to gold. The U.S. had a lead in the third period, and one of their players took a major penalty for an illegal check to the head, 5-minute power play, and Canada scored 3 times, including McKenna as well as Ginla. I think he had one of them as well. It was a crazy game, absolutely crazy game. Finished with a 6-4 win, and Canada gets gold. A lot of those players you're going to hear of coming up here in the 25 and 26 NHL drafts. We also had a signing today, a prospect, which is by Utah, I guess we call them now, no longer the Arizona Coyotes. They've signed prospect Noel North. He was a 2023 third-round selection, and he gets his 3-year entry-level contract. Now, there's also some speculation in the rumor mill regarding the future head coaching position of the Ottawa Senators. New information today from Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun and TSN. His latest article indicates that right now it looks like Craig Berube is right at the top of that list. However, with Berube, I think they're not able to nail down for sure just how many conversations he's had with the Sens. The information suggests that he's definitely interested. He's intrigued. The Sens are obviously very interested as well. But it looks like Berube is kind of waiting to see what other options he might have. And it's believed he's also talked to the Devils about their vacant position, and I think he has interest in the Leafs job if it becomes open. We don't know what's going to happen to Sheldon Keefe yet. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But if that job becomes open, I would suspect Berube would jump to the top of their list, and he would be very interested there. So as much as the Sens would like to get Berube, it may or may not happen because of the amount of competition they have for his services. He's going to be able to call his own shot here and kind of determine his own next move. Ultimately, though, they have had multiple conversations as well with Todd McClellan as well as Dean Evison. Evison very interested. Apparently, Evison's also talked, I believe, to Seattle and San Jose. Some options there. Travis Green, who's had, I guess he's considered one of the top candidates for New Jersey, where he's the interim coach there. He is apparently having multiple conversations with this Sens management as well. I'm not sure that how serious of a front runner he would be. I think all the other guys would probably have an edge on him, but at the end of the day, we'll see. It's funny, John Gruden, who's been mentioned heavily in the past 6 months of being a future coach involved with the Sens in some capacity, not mentioned in this article here today. I do believe it's more likely that he ends up on the Sens bench, maybe as an assistant, but we will see. Obviously, a strong connection there to management and owner Michael Landauer, so we'll see here what happens. But right now, those are their names involved, and apparently the Sens seem to be kind of done interviewing people, and they're kind of now at the stage where they're kind of whittling things down and going to like a second round, if you will, to kind of narrow down the next steps and determine who's going to be the finalists here. So as I mentioned, we had a big playoff game last night, Game 7, Toronto-Boston on a Saturday night. It was epic and it was fun, very entertaining, especially for those of us without a horse in the race, as they say. But it was a really good game. Unfortunately for Toronto fans, they came up short. Fortunately for Bruins fans, they're moving on and will face the Florida Panthers. It ended up going to overtime. Of course, it was scoreless through 2 periods. Into the third period, in the second half, we saw Matthews with a nice pass to Nylander, who scores, put the Leafs up 1-0. But like we've seen a lot in this series, that lead did not last long. The Bruins answered back with a goal from Hampus Lindholm. I think it was like a minute and a half later. It wasn't long. It was less than 2 minutes later they get the game tied up, and it goes to overtime. Game 7, overtime. It's what a lot of players dream of when you're little kids playing, in your driveway or street hockey or, what have you, when you're just going to goofing around with your friends. It's everybody wants to be the Game 7 overtime hero. Well, that hero turned out to be David Pastrnak, who was just recently called out by head coach Jim Montgomery that they needed more from him. Well, he delivered. And to be honest, this was a quick into overtime. It was under 2 minutes. I think it was a minute and 50-something seconds. You could see as they were coming up to enter the Leaf zone that it was a set play. You could see David Pastrnak kind of winding up in the neutral zone. He blows right by Mitch Marner. Lindholm shoots it down into the corner, gets the perfect bounce back towards the middle of the ice. Pastrnak, who's coming in with speed, grabs it and is in front all alone, beats Samsonov. Bam, game over, season over for Toronto. I know that Marner is getting a lot of crap for his lack of speed of watching Pastrnak. Nylander, if you watch the clip, he's coming back slowly as well without much effort. But as much as people are crapping on those guys, really, if you look at what their assignments would be, it's really not what guy is going to be coming back and going that hard into the corner for a winger like that. It's really not. To me, the two main culprits here is Riley and Samsonov. When that puck pops back out, to me, Samsonov had time. He's deep in his net. If he's at the top of his crease, he's got time to either jump on it or poke check it away. And Riley reacted too slowly. So they were all kind of puck watching. And meanwhile, like I said, you can see Pastrnak kind of look at Lindholm and point his stick up, saying now they dump it in, and it was a set play, and they beat them. Bam! It's unfortunate, but that's what happened. And just like that, the Bruins crowd's going crazy, and the Leafs are in despair. They look stunned, and they didn't see it coming. Like I said, they were almost a little sleepy out there in overtime. This is Game 7, overtime, and I just can't believe nobody really seen Pastrnak coming in, that they were really prepared for him, because they should have been, and they could have made that stop. The goal, you could make an argument as well that Samsonov, the goal he let in for Lindholm to tie it up, was probably one that shouldn't have gone in either. So at the end of the day, it wasn't a great finish for the Leafs. They had a good series. They had a lot of grit, a lot of fight in them to come back and make it a 7-game series. Obviously, they had to do it without Matthews. Matthews comes back. You could tell he wasn't 100%. But he did play well, considering. Made some good plays. And that's it. Now, in the next big question, what everybody's talking about now, is what's next? Now what? Now, we learned today from insider Chris Johnston that the Leafs players and head coach Sheldon Keefe will speak to the media tomorrow on Monday. But management is not speaking until Thursday. And we don't know exactly which members of management are going to be part of this. Is it just going to be Trey Living? Is it Trey Living and Shanahan? That part wasn't made clear. So we don't really know what all to expect. I suspect that the Leafs management may not speak until Thursday, so that they have time to maybe do a little bit more of a analyzing, review, assess the situation, and maybe they'll have a determination on the future fate of Sheldon Keefe. Because a lot of people suspected that, unfortunately, the loser of the Bruins-Leafs series was probably going to have the fired coach. Because for Montgomery, it would be 2 consecutive years in round 1 after having really solid regular seasons, but they blew a 3-1 series lead in the playoffs in the first round and got nowhere. So you'd have to think the pressure was on him, and that could have cost him his job. Now I think the fact that they didn't let that happen 2 years in a row, we'll see what happens against Florida. I think the Panthers will be the favorites to win that series, but I don't know that he's going to be in serious danger now. In the case of Sheldon Keefe, been there quite a while. 1 series win, which came last year against the Lightning. This year they take a step back, and here we are. I mean, they're without Joseph Woll. Joseph Woll could not go in Game 7. The dying seconds of Game 6, jumps across the crease to make a save and injures himself. So they ended up getting Matthews back. Woll's out. I mean, it's tough. I mean, Keefe's been there a while. He's not the coach. He wasn't brought in by the current GM, and that's how things go in the NHL. When GMs come in, if there's already a coach there that they inherit, they typically don't last too long unless the team's having a great deal of success. And that wasn't the case here. So I honestly do think Sheldon Keefe will be let go. He signed an extension. He does have another year in his contract. So it's not 100% given. I'd say it's about a 90-10 though, at best. I think that Keefe will be gone. But that's a big decision that has to be made, and we'll hear from Leafs management on Thursday. It very well could be announced. If they make that decision, maybe we hear that, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. Either way, we know they're going to speak Thursday. The big question, though, is around the roster. Majority of NHL reporters and insiders, Elliot Friedman, Chris Johnston, you name it, Pierre LeBrun, they've all said it. Darren Dreger, too. This Leafs core group is like their last chance. There's no way they're going to run it back. How many times have they ran back this core group? And they've got no further ahead. So it's time for change. And I think the general consensus is there's going to be significant change. Now, I know I seen Nick Kyprios on Sportsnet last night after the game, talking to the Sportsnet, I think it was Canada Ivanka on Sportsnet, Sports Center. And he said, because they asked him, if you were the GM, what would you do? And he said he would go to Tavares and Marner both. Since they both have 1 year left on their contract, they both have no move clauses. And he would ask them both to waive and look at moving them both. That would give them so much financial flexibility, not to mention probably decent returns. Talk to them and be like, okay. Like in the case of Tavares, be like, you got 1 year left on your contract. This hasn't been working out. Like you've played well for us. We appreciate that, but we're not getting any further ahead as a team. Would you give us a list of teams that you'd be willing to go to and see if they can find a way to move the contract? When it comes to Mitch Marner, it'd be the same thing. A little bit of a different conversation, though. It'd be more like, okay, you got a year left on your contract. You're going to be looking for a raise in that contract. We're not interested in paying you $12, $13 million on another 6, 7, 8 year deal with the way the cap situation is and the way this team hasn't been winning in the playoffs. So we need to move you. So why don't you work with us? You'll obviously have a lot of say here. We have a no move clause. Give us a list of teams that you're willing to go to, and we'll see what we can work out. And then you can get your contract extension done with them and move on and get this team shaken up. I mean, haven't heard a lot about Morgan Rielly. He's been there the longest. I think Rielly probably stays. I don't see Rielly being a part of the issue, but I do think he needs a lot more help on the blue line. They did add a lot more of that grit. I will give the Leafs credit. They did add a lot what Trey Living calls the snot and the grit. They played better playoff hockey than I've ever seen them play when it comes to blocking shots, buying in, and just the grit, the hitting. They proved that they could play that style. The problem here is they can't score. You've got well over $40+ million tied up in those 4 forwards, and you're averaging, and I think it's like 14 games in the playoffs, the last 14 games, they can't score more than 2 goals. That's supposed to be their biggest strength, that they're an offensive juggernaut. And they, for the longest time, it was like, well, they couldn't defend, or they didn't have the consistent goaltending. they actually had their goaltending for the most part hasn't been atrocious. Defensively, they've had their woes. This D group that they have now, I think they could use another top-tier D to play with Riley. I think there's way too much on him so they can help generate more. That's more of a puck-moving offensive standpoint, though. From the defensive standpoint, like I said, blocking shots, the grit, the defensive play, they brought in Joel Edmondson. They brought in Benoit played this year. Look at Labushkin. They all fit well. They played a lot better than they have in the past. And it's still not enough. You still can't get out of round one because you can't score goals. So that's why I think that the change now has to come within that core group. You can't say we continue to pay you guys well over $40 million a year, and those raises are only going to continue to go up. You've already signed Matthews long-term. You've already signed Nylander long-term. They're not going anywhere. I mean, Matthews is your best player. Going to win a bunch of hardware this year, one of the best players in the league. And William Nylander, you can say what you want about him. He has his moments where he's frustrating. But he's been their best playoff performer, and he led that group. Even though he missed a few games, he's had 3 goals in the playoffs. Like, he had more than the other guys. Like, Marner's put up the least. And, Tavares is certainly getting up there. He's not like he's finished or anything, but he's slowing down. I think that's fair to say. So, to me, I think you're going to see at least one core group of this team leave, Marner being the most likely. But at the end of the day, the Leafs have handcuffed themselves here with the no-move clauses. And if they decide that they don't want to go anywhere and they refuse, then they won't. It's just that simple. But you'd have to think with Marner, especially being the hometown kid. I know Tavares is as well, but he's older, more mature. The pressure doesn't seem to get to him like it does Marner. Tavares has been a better performer. When it comes to JT, it's just a contract. It's not even about his performance. I do think the team could use a better captain, though. No offense to him. Good player. I'm not sure he's a great captain. He's not the type of leader I don't think that team needs. But with Marner, I just think it's a case of he needs to get into a market where he can kind of fly under the radar a little bit and just have a different off-ice relationship with the game, because you can tell when you get to playoff time, it gets to him, the pressure. There's lots of talk about where he could end up. I've seen different trade. I've seen some with the Kings. I've seen some with the Ducks. I've seen some with, Vegas. We've talked before about a variety of stops, where Marner could go. And it's really hard to say where that's going to be. But the strong belief right now is that the Leafs need to have that conversation with him. And I would suspect that a major trade this offseason involving Marner is there, unless he just refuses to play ball. And the future of Tavares is questionable. I think you got to talk to him, but it's 1 year. If you can move at least one of Marner or Tavares and free up that money to do other things with, then you can probably hang on to the other one to have that other year left. And in the case of Tavares, if he stays, you could consider keeping him beyond that contract if he's willing to take a big pay cut, because he's not worth $11 million. No offense to Leaf fans, but he's never been worth $11 million. But all that aside, if he wants to take a major drop and really be that hometown kid that takes a discount to try to win, fine. You keep him. You extend him for a couple more years. He can still play well enough to be, a decent contributor. He's just not the guy anymore, in my opinion. I would move the C to a new person, probably Matthews. So in that case, we'll see what happens. But the Leafs are going to be super interesting. This Game 7 loss, I'm sure, stings. Belief is ownership with a new president are not happy, and it's the end of this core, according to the insiders. So we'll see what they say, and we'll see what happens. But they're going to be a very interesting team to watch, and I'd be very curious to see what we learn tomorrow when the Leafs players and Sheldon Keefe speaks to the media. So let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.